Chapter 6 is the introduction to interpersonal communication. And again, this is one of my favorite chapters because it really digs into the different types of relationships that we develop and not just romantic relationships. So an overview of the chapter is defining what interpersonal communication is, the purpose of it, the elements of it, universals of interpersonal communication, different forms, the challenges, the axioms of interpersonal, types of relationships, theories on relationship development, communication tips for maintaining relationships, emotion in interpersonal communication, and then finally understanding interpersonal relationships, development to dissolution. The chapter also discusses the understanding for close relationships, gender, intercultural relationships, assertiveness, and sharing oneself with people from other cultures. So just to define interpersonal communication, the process of it consists of elements that interact through mutual verbal interaction to produce the ongoing formation of norms as part of the process. At a simple level, relationships are associations or connections between two or more people. They're interdependent, and they use some consistent patterns of interactions and have interacted for a certain period of time. Interpersonal communication is a special form of unmediated human connection. This occurs when we interact simultaneously with another person and attempt to mutually influence one another. Usually the purpose of this is to maintain and manage relationships. The purposes of interpersonal communication are to learn, relate, influence, play, heal, help, socialize, and resolve conflicts. There are many different forms of interpersonal communication. So this can occur in different contexts, one being face-to-face, in real time and immediate. Another is online. Online communication is now a big part of our lives, such as this class. So part of this is through email, listservs or mailing lists, instant messaging, chat groups, discussion boards, etc. The axioms of interpersonal communication. One is that it's a transactional process. The transactional model of communication reflects a real-world model. It illustrates that people communicate simultaneously as a sender and a receiver in a cooperative fashion. So while you're both sending messages to other individuals, you are receiving messages from them at the same time, both verbal and nonverbal. Interpersonal communication is a process. It's ever-changing and it's circular. Interpersonal refers to content and relationships. So content-wise, messages can refer to the real world around us. In dealing with content, we deal with meanings. Relationship messages can refer to the relationships between people that are communicating. Interpersonal is a series of punctuated events. Communicators segment this continuous stream of communication into small pieces. You label some pieces stimuli and other responses. And interpersonal communication is inevitable, irreversible, and unrepeatable. You cannot avoid communicating. Even if you are saying nothing and looking at no one, you are still conveying a message non-verbally, maybe that you don't want to be communicated to, but you're still communicating. It's irreversible. Once you've communicated, you can't take it back. You can backpedal all you want, but once you've said what you've said, it's out there. And if any of us have been in a conflict situation, you know this is true. The chapter talks about many different types of interpersonal relationships, and you have all of these at some point or another. First, starting at strangers in the world around us, to acquaintances, to coworkers and friends, to our closer interpersonal relationships like family members, or, our romantic relationships. And linking into that is interesting information about love and what types of lovers we are. So there are many different love types, and this starts on page 230, and I urge you to go ahead and really consider the 6 different ways that we can love other individuals, and each relationship that you have or have had in the past may have different types of love. So there's eros, storge, mania, agape, ludus, etc. So eros is the first, and this love style centers on beauty and sexuality. It's more erotic or physical love. Ludus is the love style that shows entertainment and excitement. It measures a love as kind of a game to be played out with diverse partners. There's not a lot of depth. A lot of this type of love is surface level. Storge is next. This is a very peaceful and slow love. The style reflects an inclination to merge love and friendship together, so many times these individuals are satisfied in long-term relationships. Pragma love style is practical, is traditional. They look for compatibility and logic. There's maybe a shopping list of love. Mania. Mania lovers are elated and depressed with highs and lows all the time. They might have jealous tendencies, they're obsessive, and many of the times it's tied to self-image. A mania lover equates love with possessiveness, dependency, and a lot of time there is high emotional expressiveness and composure, but low self-esteem. Agape love shows compassion and is selfless and spiritual, without concern for personal gains. Consider which love type you are in with some of your closer interpersonal relationships, be they romantic or familial or even friendly. Linking back kind of to chapter 3, when we talked about different types of families, this chapter also talks about the different characteristics of families, different roles, responsibilities, orientations, relationships, and rules. So part of this is family types that I've mentioned before. But now breaking it down a bit more from just the first type is a traditional family. This is a shared belief system and philosophy of life. They have traditional sex roles, so in general it's a husband and wife. They are permanent and they rarely think of separation or divorce. This is very, very traditional. They are independent families. They believe that a relationship is more important than the individual identity. They see themselves as kind of androgynous, as one entity. They engage in conflict openly and without fear. There are separate families that live together but see the relationship as a matter of convenience. They have little desire to be together. They have separate physical and psychological space. They see themselves as individuals, not part of the we. And then there's combination families. Separate, traditional, independent. These can all work in different ways. There are many different theories that this chapter talks about on relationships and development, and the three that are really important to the chapter are uncertainty reduction theory, which is pretty self-explanatory, social penetration theory, and rules theory. There's also relationship dialectical theory and specific rules for different types of relationships. One of the theories that might appeal to many of you is attraction theory. So this is, the desire to interact with someone based on many different factors, including physical attractiveness, personality, rewards, proximity, or similarities. You can look at these different types of traits also in the book on page 242. Finally, they discuss equity theory, among others. I'm not going to go into detail on each of these theories, but I do want you to look at each of them and understand the differences between them. There are communication tips for maintaining relationships, and some of these are very obvious and straightforward, but obviously we don't always do them. First is be nice. Communicate. Be open. Give assurances. Share activities. Be a positive person. And improve yourself constantly. Page 250 starts talking about emotions and physical reactions and cognitions in relationships and in communication. So, many times emotions come in different forms, but we break them down into kind of three categories: joyful, affectionate emotions, hostile emotions, and sad or anxious emotions. And of course, these get broken down more and more specifically. But the nature of emotion is that it's multidimensional. There are primary forms that are distinct emotional experiences, meta-emotions, emotions about emotions, secondary forms, emotions composed of combinations, and influences. Also, culture has a big influence on the nature of emotion. So, individualistic, geography, co-cultures, and collective cultures. There are emotional communication skills. First is to identify emotions, listen to your body, pay attention to your thoughts. Second is to reappraise negative emotions, change kind of how you're thinking about things. Third is to accept responsibility for emotions. If you're feeling it, it's on you. And fourth is to separate emotions from actions. This is kind of the idea of knowing when to leave the stress at the door, depending on where you are and who you're talking to. And then when to really bring it up and talk about it. So then there is a range from the beginning to the end of a relationship. This is known as development to dissolution. This starts on page 252, so you can follow along. There's the initial contact, the involvement or testing of the relationship, the intimacy. There are 2 stages of this: interpersonal commitment and social bonding. There's intimacy and risk, and then intimacy and social penetration as well. Interpersonal repair. So even if something happens, you still want to repair the relationship. There are strategies of disengagement, so trying to break up, dealing with a breakup, and then the dissolution. Now, when there is the dissolution of relationships, that does not mean that at some point they cannot come back together, but that does start a new sequence of the relationship with a new contact. The next is knowing the differences in communicating in romantic relationships and the nature of intimate relationships. And this is all on pages 258, 259, 260, and then finishing up on 261. Linking from that is understanding close relationships. These are relationships that are ongoing. They have a past, a present, and a future. Gender and communication, talking about women, families, and children, linking into feminist theory. The difference between men and women as they talk about emotions and as they develop and grow and really communicate with one another in interpersonal relationships. It is different, but it is also similar. Be sure that you are taking the quiz for Chapter 6 as well as posting on the discussion board. Don't forget to respond to at least 2 individuals' posts as well. And really take the time to read the posts and respond in some certain way. This should at least be a paragraph, because I want you to really put the thought into it and link it back to the book or back to your personal experiences, or both. I hope that this recording has helped you a little bit, as well as the PowerPoint that accompanies it, and I will see you guys in the next chapter. Take care.